So welcome to a beginner chair yoga class. I'm happy to have you here with me today. Before we begin, I'd like to show you what props you'll need to experience this class most efficiently. So the first thing that I suggest you get is a yoga mat. And it doesn't have to be an expensive yoga mat. All you need is a yoga mat that is somewhat sticky. And the reason that it needs to be sticky is because when we go to the standing poses with the chair, and if you are pushing against the chair on a slippery surface, you may push the chair away from you and end up falling on your face. So you'll need a sticky yoga mat, similar to the one I have here underneath my chair. Another thing that I suggest you have is a couple of yoga blocks. And again, they don't have to be expensive yoga blocks. You can usually get them at any sports store. Something simple and about this size. If you're a smaller person like me, I'm about 5'1 3/4", you'll really need those 2 blocks to put underneath your feet like I have. Because when we're sitting and doing our postures, you want to make sure that your thigh bones, the femurs, are parallel to the floor, or as parallel to the floor as you can get them. If your knees are down on the floor and your hips are higher, this will eventually cause some undue stress on your back and you'll become uncomfortable. So I suggest, if you're a smaller person, 5'2" and under, that you have 2 yoga blocks to put underneath your feet. If you have long legs and your thigh bones are parallel to the floor without the blocks, then you won't need them. So the next thing you're going to need, of course, is the chair. And the chair that I have here has no arms, it has a supportive back, and it's fairly firm. It's not too soft. You don't want a chair that has too soft of a seat because your pelvic bowl won't be able to ground and balance evenly. Maybe it'll be softer on one side than the other and your pelvic bowl may tilt. And we want an even pelvic bowl for the class, so a nice firm seat is best. A supportive back, and again, not too high so that your knees are way below your hips. And not too low. You wouldn't want a little stool, for example, then your knees would be way up by your chest area. So a firm chair with no arms is best. The next thing you may want to have is a blanket. I have a blanket here on the floor, and that's for relaxation at the end. You may want to cover yourself at the end, because sometimes we get cool when we're laying, doing nothing and relaxing. And you may want to have a pillow. A nice, flat, firm pillow, nothing too soft. That can be very helpful during the relaxation pose as well. You can put your feet on top of that pillow on a second chair. So those are the things that we usually use in a typical yoga class. So now we come to the part where I show you how to sit in your chair. I'm going to sit away from the back of the chair, as far away from the back of the chair as I can, so that I'm using my abdominal muscles to keep my torso upright. As far to the edge of the seat as possible without feeling like you're going to fall off, because you want to feel safe when you're in your chair. So again, you may notice now that my thigh bones, the femurs, are pretty parallel to the floor because I have the blocks under my feet. So what I'm going to do is make sure that both of my feet are doing the exact same things on both sides. So check out your feet, see if they're both pointing in the same direction, see if both sets of toes are doing the same things, and then make sure that your feet are hip width apart as well. So however wide your hip bones are, you want your femur bones, your knees, your shins, and your feet to all be that same distance apart. And this is where you're going to start. Now, if for some reason you have some hip injuries, something going on where you need to widen that stance a little bit, that's okay, you can do that. Just be comfortable. But we start here, hip width apart. So the feet, the knees, the thigh bones, hip width apart. So we come to the pelvic bowl. To make sure that the pelvic bowl is grounded as evenly as possible, we lean forward a bit, pull your stuff, I call it, out from under the pelvic bowl, pull it out from the back and pull it out from the sides. as well. So you've got all your material pulled out from under your sits bones. And then you can feel those sits bones more grounded into the seat of the chair. And here's where, when I said that you don't want a seat that's too cushy, this is one of the reasons. If you had a really cushy seat, like a lazy boy, you wouldn't be able to feel if your sits bones were evenly balanced into that seat or not. So a firm base is the best. Sits bones are the bones that you're sitting on. So when you sit down and you wiggle a little bit, you can feel the two bones basically underneath your buttocks. We call those the sits bones in yoga. So make sure the sits bones are evenly grounded. So the next thing you want to do is notice your pelvic bowl. So this here is your pelvic bowl. I'm just going to put my hands on my pelvic bowl to demonstrate what you want to do to find a neutral pelvic bowl. So most students, when they're beginning, sit like this. Their posture is poor, their pelvic bowl is tilted backwards, and this is very unhealthy posture. There are very few students that sit the exact opposite. Their pelvic bowl is pushed forward this way. Not too many students sit like that, but I have seen a few. Neither of those is a neutral pelvic bowl. You want to bring it right in the middle. So it may help you if you just rock that pelvic bowl forward and backwards gently a few times until you sense that you've found a neutral place. And you're going to move with your instincts for the whole class, starting now. So when you sense that you found that neutral pelvic bowl, most likely you have. So once you've got your neutral pelvic bowl, then you're going to start moving up the body. So what we do is we feel the tailbone area. So in between those two sits bones that you have evenly grounded, you're going to feel the tailbone area between the two. And then imagine that your mind is slowly moving up the spine, and each vertebrae, one on top of the next, is lifting up a little higher than the previous vertebrae. So the little jelly-like discs in between the vertebrae aren't squished. It's like you're lifting the spine up and creating more space for those discs. And an easy way to do this for most students is to imagine there's a little string on the top of your head, like you're a puppet, and the string is very gently pulling up, and this lengthens the spine up. But it's very important that you keep your sits bones evenly grounded at the same time. Okay, so we're grounding the sits bones, and we're lengthening up through the crown. So this lengthens the body a bit more, but sometimes students will lengthen up and they're still slouching in the shoulders. See if you do that. And if so, all you have to do is bring your shoulder blades together a little bit more back there, bring the shoulders back a little bit more to open up the chest area, and then relax the shoulders as much as you can. Imagine that your shoulder blades are melting down your back. And lift the heart space up a little bit. So for the torso, we want the chest area to always be lifting up away from the pelvic bowl area. So there's nice space in between those two zones. We want lots of space in here as much as possible because this is where our abdominal organs live. And if they have more space, they will work more efficiently than if they're squished with poor posture. So remember that. Poor posture doesn't just look better, it's better for your back, it can reduce tension headaches, and it's much more better for those organs. They work much more efficiently if there's space. Okay, so we've got our chest lifted, our shoulder blades relaxed. Let's soften the shoulders a little bit more, as if they're trying to go down away from the ears, and your neck all of a sudden feels a tiny bit longer. And then sometimes students will sit or stand with their head protruding forward like this, which is poor posture and very hard on the neck muscles. So imagine that your chin is just being drawn back a little bit to place the head more on top of the spine, but as you draw it back, do not forget that the crown must be lifting up at the same time. If you just pull the chin back, you're going to create a different type of tension in the neck. So it's important that you draw the chin back, but lift up as well. And then find a comfortable space for the neck muscles so that you're not sitting like you're in boot camp. You're not that tense. We're just trying to make the spine and the torso long. Okay, so let's pretend you've got all that figured out. Now you're going to imagine that your arms are starting to melt, and the arms are just hanging off the shoulder joints. So you relax the upper arms, you relax your elbows, you relax the lower arms. Your hands are going to rest on your thighs and your fingers will soften. And you may prefer your palms facing down, or some students prefer their palms facing up. Whatever you decide to do with your hands is up to you. Both are fine. So we're all the way up here now, and we've got the head on top of the spine. The next thing you need to do is unclench your back teeth. So you unclench the back teeth and relax the jaw. You relax your lips. You soften the tongue. And you let go of your eyebrows and your forehead and your face, so your face is nice and smooth. And here you are in the pose we call seated mountain, or Maitri Asana in Sanskrit. And this is the beginning posture of all seated poses. We come back to seated mountain quite a bit, so it's important that you learn that pose. So now we'll close our eyes, but if you want to keep watching to see what I'm doing, that's fine. Eventually, you'll close your eyes when you get used to the class. You will close your eyes sometime and then begin to notice your breath. And before you begin to change the breath in any way, just notice it. Notice how the inhales come into the nose and how the exhales leave the nose. Now, if you have a sinus congestion or any sort of sinus issues and you cannot breathe in and out through the nose, it's okay to use your mouth. Just try to use the nose first. So in and out through the nose, noticing the breath. Notice how cool the air is when it comes into the nostrils compared to how much warmer the air is when it leaves the nostrils. And just take a moment or so to notice that. Notice how your breath moves. Don't try to change it. Most times when we notice something about the breath, we automatically try to control it. Let's not control it yet. So just notice your breathing. Notice when the air comes into the body, notice how deep it feels like you're breathing. And then release the air and notice where the air seems to come out from. So now you're ready to begin your class.